Sensei Richard Stone, a black belt, challenged Arthur Hayes, a janitor, to spar for fun. What happened next stunned everyone in the martial arts gym. "Hey, you there cleaning? How about a quick demonstration?" Richard from the center of the mat, his black belt shining. "I bet you've never seen a real fight, right?" Arthur stopped mopping and slowly looked up. At 42, he'd been cleaning the gym for only 3 weeks, usually after hours. But tonight, the advanced class ran late. "I don't want to bother you, Sensei," Arthur calmly replied, going back to a stubborn stain. "Just finishing up so you can get back to it?" Richard let out a loud, mocking laugh. "Everyone, look at this! The guy's afraid to even step on the mat?" The 8 students chuckled nervously, some clearly uncomfortable. Richard didn't know that Arthur had spent 20 years trying to forget who he really was. 20 years since leaving the fighting ring after a life-changing accident. 20 years keeping a secret even his teenage daughter didn't know. "Come on, man," Richard continued, approaching with his usual arrogant smile. "Just a little demo. I bet you don't even know a basic guard. How about showing my students the difference between someone who trains and someone who just cleans?" Arthur felt a familiar feeling in his chest, like an old muscle waking up. His eyes met Richard's briefly, and for a split second, something passed between them that made Richard step back. "Just an educational demonstration," Richard insisted, trying to hide his sudden uncertainty. "Nothing serious, just to show beginners why it's important to respect martial arts." Arthur put the bucket down and slowly stood up. His movements were surprisingly smooth for someone supposedly new to a mat. Around the gym, students stopped training, sensing something was about to happen. "All right," Arthur finally said, his voice calm like a lake before a storm. "But when we're done, you're going to apologize to all of them for turning this mat into a circus." Richard, laughed, but it sounded forced this time. "Apologize, man. You'll be apologizing to the floor when you meet it." None of them knew that Arthur Hayes had once been Arthur Ironclad Hayes, a 5-time world mixed martial arts champion. He had retired at his peak after an accident that cost his best friend and training partner Leo, the Crusher Martinez, his life. Since then, Arthur had sworn never to fight again. But some promises are broken when dignity is on the line. Richard adjusted his black belt with a dramatic flair, enjoying the attention. "Everyone gather around. You're about to see a lesson worth more than 6 months of training." Click. The difference between those who dedicate their lives to martial arts and those who just clean the floor where real fighters walk. Arthur stood still in the center of the mat, but his breathing had changed. His eyes closed briefly, and for a moment he wasn't in that gym in Denver. He was back at the National Gymnasium in Las Vegas 22 years ago, hearing similar insults before his world title fight. "Look at that little long-haired guy. I bet he won't last 3 rounds against a real fighter," someone had yelled. Arthur had won by knockout in the 2nd round, but the victory came at a heavy price. The pressure from the racist comments had made him lose control during a sparring session, leading to Leo's accidental death. "So, Janitor," Richard sneered, circling Arthur like a predator. "How about showing my students how not to do a basic guard? Or is that too complicated for someone who only knows how to push a mop?" That's when Maya Lin couldn't stay quiet. The 22-year-old jiu-jitsu purple belt and psychology student had been studying sports discrimination. What she saw was deeply unsettling. "Sensei Richard," she began timidly. "Excuse me, Maya, but who's teaching here?" "You are," she replied. "But that shouldn't include racial humiliation disguised as a technical demonstration." Several students exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever challenged Richard like this. Richard's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. "Racial? Haha," Richard forced a laugh. "This has nothing to do with race. It's about respect for martial arts and knowing your place." Arthur slowly opened his eyes. There was something in Maya's words, her courage against authority, that reminded him of his younger sister Chloe. She had the same determination, the same refusal to silently accept unfairness. Chloe had died at 17. A victim of a stray bullet during a police confrontation. Arthur was fighting in Japan when he got the news. Another loved one lost while he chased glory far away. Another reason to give it all up and disappear into an ordinary life. Maya, Richard said in a dangerously low voice. If you can't respect my teaching methods, maybe you should find another gym. There are places more suited to people with your mindset. The threat hung heavy in the air. Maya felt a chill, but stood firm. My tuition is paid, Sensei, and I believe everyone here deserves a learning environment based on mutual respect, not humiliation. That's when Arthur did something unexpected. He started to smile. It wasn't a nervous or weak smile. It was the slow, deliberate smile of someone who had just found a reason to stop hiding.